Hello, everyone. Hope you are enjoying this festival. Welcome to day three, where we are talking about activating the body as a sacred portal for high frequency healing. Now, your body is ancient. Your body has an intelligence that has survived thousands of years. For us to be here through famine, through certain things that we've gone through on earth, through war, that the fact that our DNA has made it this far is really truly survival of the fittest. And I want to be talking about how your body communicates to you constantly and communicates to others constantly. So your body is continuously offering a signal to you. Are all your layers, like your physical being, your emotional being, and your spiritual being. It's constantly telling you how it feels physically, how it feels emotionally, how it feels mentally. But what we have been trained to do through programming is to suppress those signals so we can be part of the 9 to 5 movement, so we can be part of people pleasing, so we can be part of the industrial revolution. I don't know, right? Whatever it is. But these signals don't stop transmitting. They just get louder and louder. Maybe you have a chronic illness now because your physical body has been so loud and you've missed the messages. Maybe you have emotional repeated patterns that just don't seem to resolve. Maybe you have spiritual things going on, like insomnia, which is highly spiritual. So your body is continuously communicating with you through physical issues, emotional issues, and spiritual issues. And it's broadcasting a signal to the people around you, the people that you have relationships with. It's always emitting a signal to just the universe, like all the time, right? So we have to be super careful about what we're putting into the field and what we're absorbing into the field. So let's give some few examples of how our body offers a signal into the collective. So the physical state of our body is transmitting to ourselves and also to others. Like even when animals in the animal kingdom, when they don't feel well, they hide when they're sick because they know that predators and other beings of their species can pick up when they're not well, when they don't feel full of energy, when they don't feel like they can defend themselves or whatever it is. Another thing is an emotional state. Now, it's okay to feel things. We're emotional beings. But if we are feeling things repeatedly and it becomes such a big part of our personality and now it's stored in our bodies as memory and it becomes part of your coded personality, that's not okay. Like, for example, everyone is going to go through states of grief because on earth we lose people. It's just a fact. But if you're not able to get over that grief, and now that grief has been part of your personality because you felt it so long and your body is so used to feeling that state of grief, that is lodged in your body. And like that, many things have been lodged in our body through our life experience, through the 5 origins, the 5 origins of wounding that I'm going to be talking about more deeply, right? One of those is ancestry, mother and father wounds, things that we've gone through in our life experience, past lives, all of these things, we can feel that in our body. Another thing that our body is constantly transmitting is our body language, our micro expressions, our facial expressions, our tone of voice. Our tone of voice is like the biggest thing to transmit how we're truly feeling. It doesn't matter how much we put on a mask, our voice is always authentic because we cannot manipulate our voice. So people who are, got used to putting on a brave face, people can still feel from them what they really feel, depending on how attuned they are. Now, sensitivity is a hyper, super human power. We have been trained out of sensitivity because people wanted us to just suppress the signals of our body and just be part of what other people wanted us to do. But now we're coming back into sensitivity. We're coming back into knowing that we are highly attuned systems that are constantly picking up in the physical world, spiritual world, emotional world, the intentions others have for us, the intentions of this world, and more people are coming back into attunement, which is what we need as a humanity, as a species. And the more we are coming back into it, a place for authenticity is very real. Because if you're inauthentic, people will pick up on it. And that's in relationships, that's in workplace, that's in running a business, and that's just even in yourself. Like your body, we've come to the point where our vessels just cannot hold the inauthenticity anymore, because inauthenticity is just a sign that you have not listened to yourself, that you have been people pleasing, that you've been over giving, that you've been saying yes when your body says no, just to avoid conflict or disappointing others, where you have been the emotional support for everyone, but you've rarely felt held yourself. You know, maybe you feel underappreciated, invisible, or like you're just giving and you just your giving just goes unnoticed, you know? And this all of this is like in your throat chakra, like feeling unseen, unheard, constantly having to repeat yourself to be understood in relationships with client, even with spirit. And it's like, however much I'm speaking, people are not hearing it, you know? Maybe you water yourself down to fit in, and it just leaves you feeling emptier. You wonder, why can everyone else take up space and is heard, but not me? You know, maybe guilt you have guilt when you receive, when you take rest, when you have insomnia. I've had so many clients come to me in the last year for insomnia, thinking that it is only a physical phenomenon. It's not. When we tuned in and we went into their bedrooms, just energetically, it was like all the thoughts that they had suppressed is just in the room. And because at that spot, at that time, they kind of had that moment where they turned away from life and they were like resting, it was all coming in. Because also sleep is a time where you're going into a liminal space as well. And when you're going into liminal space, spirit comes closer, spirit speaks to you, your body speaks to you, your emotions speak to you. Everybody is just speaking to you, all your parts. And I was like, wow, okay, so this is what's going on. This is why you have insomnia, because there's so many things that you have ignored. You haven't maintained your field, your aura, you know, your being. You haven't listened to your being throughout the day. And now all of that is in the room in the form of thought forms. And what are thought forms? Thought forms are things that we keep on thinking. If we have a thought over and over again, it's like we're creating thought forms and then we're feeding them with the thoughts and they become their own consciousness. And we have this in the collective consciousness and it's called egregores. We can have positive thought forms and feed them, like when we work with the light and when we do high vibrational things, and then we can have negative thought forms and feed them. And I talk a lot about thought forms. Like when you walk into a grocery store and you pick up on a thought that just pops into your head, you might think, oh, that's my thought. No, it's just because somebody else had that thought and they'd uploaded it to the collective cloud of the grocery store. And because you were in the same frequency of that person, that thought popped in. But you shouldn't really take that thought as your own, because a lot of our thoughts are not our own. And this is why meditation is very powerful, because it teaches you to first know yourself through introspection and then know that the thoughts that are coming in are not yours. 90% of the thoughts are not yours. So I walk into somebody's house, I can immediately feel the state and the thoughts that that person has been thinking, because it's constantly being uploaded. And even if you're not as intuitive or sensitive, you can still feel it, because you just feel an emotion. Sometimes you go somewhere, you just feel an emotion. It's because of the vibration of that space. It's because of the thoughts that have been taken up in that space. That's why when you go to a deeply spiritual space, you feel uplifted, maybe because it's more of a higher vibration. So with insomnia, there was just so many, it's just an example of a condition where so many thought forms are in that space, where the minute that person was going to sleep, it was just coming back in and disrupting them and disturbing them. So going back to, you know, some of the things where how your body's sending a signal is just also feeling like you've shape-shifted so much. You don't know what's authentically you, right? You're multi-passionate, but you're always second guessing your path. And this also creates this mixed signal that's transmitted to yourself and transmitted outside into the field. And if you listen to my talk yesterday and you've got business or, sound healing business or a soul legacy and it's not fully landing, it's because of all of these. I talk about so many distortions that go on that stop you from just being like a clear signal to the universe so you can match up with what it is that you actually want. Now, other things are just like I talked about grief and disappointment that's lodged in your heart chakra that you just haven't been able to melt. The other thing is when there's just so many different parts of you that want different things and you haven't been able to line up your intention, your desires, your actions, your thoughts. It's just pulling you in all different directions. Now, one thing I see a lot is when the intimacy thing, right? When you really struggle to let other people in, when you are really there, you're present, but you feel disconnected from them. You feel there is a distance emotionally. You struggle to trust others. Like everything looks fine from the outside, but there's old things that are still haunting you that's in the way of that intuition. Um, and just, yeah, other things, other things. I think there's so many different things. Like when you don't feel enough, when you overthink everything, when your intuition is fuzzy, when, the relationship, the business, the success is all there, but you just have this subtle emptiness, or you just really can't manage to align with the direction that your soul is calling you in. So the work that I do with people is to return them back to sovereignty and to reclaim the body as a temple, to truly release the energies that do not belong to you, to clean up your field physically, emotionally, spiritually, to call your power back from all the different people that you've been in connection with, from all the different timelines and lifelines, and to make yourself magnetic, clear, and sovereign. So you have a very clear understanding of how your body as a portal and a vessel is continuously giving you messages about what needs to be cleared and the direction to go in to get the things that you want, and continuously sending a clear signal out into the universe, out into the collective, into the to other people about who you are, what you'll say yes to, what you'll say no to, and to truly be heard when you speak the first time. Truly feel seen. No more people pleasing or overgiving because the people in your life will never expect that from you. You are well rested, and when you rest, you feel rested. It's not like you're asleep all night and you still feel tired. You know exactly who you are, what is authentically you. You don't second guess your path and you are fully yourself. You have healed all the grief and the disappointment from the past. You've given over that energy. You've made peace with the experience. There is no more tug of war. Your intentions, your actions, your output, everything is aligned. Your heart is open. You trust the right people and you are able to be deeply intimate with someone. You don't feel drawn to anything in the collective consciousness that is leading you astray and distorting you, like social media scrolls or falling into rabbit holes. You don't feel the need to overthink everything because you understand that your thoughts are not yours. And this isn't done through meditation. This is done through when you do enough clearing, you will understand how much of like how 90% of what you thought was your personality is not yours. And you will make space for the new to come in. You won't feel dissatisfied because you are actually going in the direction of your life. You become magnetic and you become clear. And right now, the person that needs to be healed the most is the healer, the empath, the one that's doing for everybody, because that person is already so giving and open and sensitive, and they are the frequency leaders of this time, but they need to be healed because they're here healing everybody else. And actually, they've got wounds that they need to be seen, held, felt. And that is what today is all about. Now, I want to be talking about the five origins, and I'm going to be telling you some of the stories from my clients in their own words because I've got them to write down, how they felt at the time before kind of doing this process. And the reason I want to do this is if the only thing that you can walk away feeling is that you're not alone. There's other people as a collective that are going through things that may be very similar to you. And to feel that there is a way out, there is a solution, and you're not alone. And also, we're going to be talking about how the chakras play a role as well. So, the five origins is where I see all the wounding of somebody coming from. Now, the first origin is mother and father wounds. And I have created, if you've got the golden circle, I've created a whole masterclass on just mother and father wounds and how certain different situations that you've had with your mother and father show up in your daily life. And again, I put loads of stories in there, and it's just such a great masterclass that so many people, have resonated with. So if you want access to that, get the Golden Circle. It's in there with so much other good stuff. The link is down below. So the mother and father wounds come about from conception. Now, in Kundalini Tantra, the moment of conception is a really important portal. The parents actually have to prepare their mind and body like months in advance before they even attempt to have a child. That's actually the teaching. But obviously, in the modern age, we've lost that knowledge. So when you conceive, it is like you're fusing everything in that. It's like this, it's like a big bang in itself, right? So you have to physically be clear and energetically be clear because you have to match up with the frequency of the soul that's coming in, and you have to just be emotionally clear and done with the like highest love and all of that kind of stuff. It doesn't mean a lot of us are not born from that premise. It doesn't mean that we are sinners and we are not high vibrational beings and we're not high frequency. Some of us are very old souls that have chosen to come in at a time to take on the kind of sludge of our lineage and transmute it. So it doesn't mean that. But I think going forward, we need to reclaim this ancient knowledge and understand that conception point is really important, and also understand that the conception point of when we were conceived is really important. So conception is a portal of just where wounding can occur, right? And one of the clients that I worked with who had a conception wound is that her soul never felt fully chosen. She wrote this. This is in her own words. I always felt like I was an afterthought. My mother once told me I was a surprise, not wanted but unexpected. I didn't realize until our session that this unplanned energy lived in my field. I'd been walking through life trying to prove I deserved to exist. Every business launch, every relationship, it all had me screaming, please want me. So she always felt, before our session, she always felt that everywhere she just wasn't fully chosen, that she had to really push. And, it was almost like, I'm not meant to be here, but I really want to be here because of the conception wound that her mother was very kind of like, it was a surprise and she was unprepared, and it was really felt but in by the child in the bio memory, right? And it showed up as a lack of worthiness, of hyper vigilance, of overachievement, of having to prove like I am worthy to be here. And the healing that we had to do was to reclaim the soul's sacred right to be here by choice, not chance. Because deep down, she always felt that it was by chance, that she was really lucky to be here. And I was like, no, it doesn't matter that your mother was in two minds because you are here. And that was a strong choice, actually. Just both of your higher selves was a choice. So this is an example of how when, the state of conception can really affect a soul. The second thing is the 9 months in the womb. Now, many babies, their spirit doesn't always come in in the 9 months. They don't spend the whole 9 months in the womb. Sometimes they come in at the point of 6 months, or sometimes they do spend the whole time, or something. Sometimes come in at the point of birth. But the bio memory, the body is in the womb, and the body, as we know, holds memory. So the body is always absorbing everything. So there are certain womb imprints. So this is another client that I worked with, and she wrote this about when we did work around the womb, when we realized, that a lot of what she was feeling stemmed from her time in the womb. So she wrote, in the womb, my mother was grieving the loss of her own mother. She was anxious, overwhelmed, and often cried. I now realize I absorbed all of that. I've carried a sadness my whole life that didn't feel like mine. I've always been overly empathetic, like I could feel everyone's pain, and it wasn't until I connected to my womb story that I realized it started before I was even born. So, this story was her mother, didn't really have support from her father, and she was relying on her mother to kind of look after her and, be with her when having a child. And her mother had passed away. So, this was a really big grief. And this imprint had showed up in my client as an emotional sponge. She just kind of felt like damsel in distress energy. She just never felt like she, had it together. Like she always felt like something was going to happen, and she could never trace where that came from. And then we realized that it came from her time in the womb, because when we use the process, the high frequency healing method that I've developed, which I'm going to tell you about, but we use that process to find the origin point. And in healing, we were cleaned up the bio memory, and we leaned into energetic sovereignty to say, you have made it this far and you can carry on. You're not a damsel in distress. But because you can't just tell somebody that and expect them to carry this out, because this was so deep in her bio memory. So we had to do the clearing on the physical, spiritual, and emotional level. The other way a mother and father wound can show up is the birth story wound. Now, in day one, if you were here with us day one, Ashana and Dana did a whole talk interview with them on just birth stories, right? And how that affects your life. So one of my lovely clients, she said, I was born via emergency C-section. The story goes that I didn't want to come out. It explains so much. I've always struggled with trust and transitions. I fear being forced into change before I'm ready. I even delay success because deep down I equate being born to be or being visible with trauma. So she had so much resistance to visibility. She always felt like she tended to like work with coaches and mentors that kind of like forced her to, they were just like, just do it, right? But it made her more resistant to visibility. It made her feel that she had like a lot of control issues, and she really used to feel anxious when there was like sudden changes, because it was C-section. She was just kind of pulled out before she was ready, and she just was here, and she didn't choose to do that. Now, nothing is wrong in your life experience, but of course, certain things can anchor into the body. So we rewrote the birth imprint and we anchored into safety and being seen. And now her relationship with visibility is so different. Now, of course, the mother and father wound goes into the time you spend with your mother and your father, and how they are to you, and how you interpret that, how your inner child has interpreted that. So, again, a beautiful client, her father was physically present but emotionally distant. He worked all the time. And she wrote, and barely looked at me. As an adult, I've always dated people who were never truly available. So I kept trying to earn love, thinking if I just did more, they'd finally see me. But it was always his eyes I wanted to meet, his heart I wanted to feel. So her imprint was attracting, obviously, emotionally unavailable men and feeling like it was good enough because they were there, but they weren't emotionally available. But it was only reconnecting with the divine masculine and her inner father, which is what we did in session, that allowed her to make peace with the experience and attract something different. And another client wrote my mother about her mother. My mother was incredibly loving, but she was anxious, over-involved, and lived through me. I never learned how to trust my own instincts. I was always checking, is this okay? Like I needed permission to be myself. Even in my business, I second guess every step. So this person, sometimes I meet people and they say, I don't have a mother wound. I don't have a father wound. You know, my mum and dad were really loving to me, and then I say, but that can still be a wound, right? Because if something's going on and we trace it back there, in this instance, she was very close to her mother, but her mother was very enmeshed with her. And there was that codependence, that fear of separation, that disempowerment in decision making. So she had to reclaim her sovereignty and say, hey, I can make a decision without needing my mother's approval. And that, on the surface, looked completely innocent and completely healthy until we really went deep. Because when she brought this issue to me, we weren't even, we weren't even thinking mother and father wound. It's only through the HFH method that we realized it traced us back here. And she has a really, even healthier relationship with her mother now. And her mother, out of love, has understood that. And she's also been able to do her growth. So that's mother and father wounds. That's one origin of wounding. Another origin wounding is your life experience. So major life events or minor events that have had a major impact. So it doesn't matter if, every experience was not highly traumatic because there can be mini experiences that had a major effect. And this has caused you to be entangled with a different story and with other people's energies. Now, some of the examples is again, so I'll talk about like even the smallest moments can leave the deepest imprints, right? And it shapes how we see ourselves, what we believe is possible, and how we're open to life. Now, somebody came to me, one of my clients, she came to me and she had, sorry, I keep going like this because I can feel like cat hair. My whole house is covered in cat hair because I have two beautiful cats and they're shedding because it's summer, and I can just feel like cat hair on me. But anyway, um, so she always was like, look, Aishwarya, I just have low expectations in relationships and I just don't understand why. Like, I'm a great person. I've built my life. Like, she was an attractive woman. She had a great career. And even if she wasn't, like, everybody deserves to have their expectations in relationships. But she would get into relationships and she would know that it was like a low expectation, but still go for it. And the memory that it traced back to is a birthday where nobody showed up. So she was 9 and she was so excited about her birthday. She'd planned the whole thing, got a dress, got the cake, balloons, and she invited the whole class. And only two kids came, and one of them left early. And that day, she just changed. Now, this is a prime example of someone could tell you, oh, come on, it's just a birthday. You were only 9, grow up. But that experience created such an impact in her. She stopped inviting people in. Became the one who didn't need anyone, who didn't ask for too much. She just never wanted to feel that disappointment or that shame again. She was like, I just never wanted to feel it again. When we uncovered it was this. And she was just this amazing person that looks like such a high flyer in her career. And then her relationships just didn't match that because she was completely different. And she would just go for people that she knew would never abandon her. And the thing is, when this experience showed up, it would be a go-to to think, okay, it was a mother and father wound. But actually, it wasn't. It was this birthday. And when we had rewired that and released all of those emotions in her body, she was able to actually just reclaim being worthy. And she changed how she related to people and the intimacy she had with people just from this. Okay. Now, another story is again, there was a lady who was a client and she was doing really well in at work. And a new person had come and she was like really valued at work and respected at work and all of that kind of stuff. And then a new management team came in and it didn't work out and she got made redundant. And again, someone might think, okay, it's just you just got made redundant, get over it. But what happened is that what job was her pride and joy, and she'd put everything into that, and then suddenly it had gone overnight, and they were really horrible in letting her go. And this also is a testament that not everything is from your childhood experience. Some things can be from your life experience. And that just really broke her kind of just her trust in herself. It really made her feel rejected it made her feel, a lot of people had turned against her that she felt she was close to, you know. And that was like an opening moment for her to really go into something deeper within herself. And it did lead to other memories, but that was the kind of first memory that we used to open up the portal. And of course, there was other memories behind that. Other things is when you have entanglements with others. Now, energy by nature is sticky. When we sit next to somebody that is miserable, that sticks to us unless we're in a higher vibration. When we spend the day with someone who's fun and happy, that energy is also infectious. So when we are entangled with others, when we've had a relationship with somebody, we've been intimate with somebody, the stickiness of that energy has to be gone. Otherwise, you're going to attract more of that energy because frequency attracts frequency. So one of my clients, she had this karmic relationship. They'd broken up, they'd moved on, but every time she'd done something really good in her life, like launched a business or felt really good, he'd just come back in. It was like she was like, it's like we're not even on social media, but the energetically he just knows. And she was like, I can't understand why, there's no way for him to know when I'm in a good space or a bad space. And it was like there was chords there, but they weren't physical, but they ran deep. There was this real entanglement in the ether. They were still connected, and she could not let go of him. She could, in the sense, like this all kept happening, like him popping up. She couldn't move on. She couldn't really feel like she had, every time he popped up, it would like pull her back. And it was just like years later, she was like, I want to have settle down, I want to have kids. And it was when we went deeper and we saw that there was so much entanglement and we had to like separate the energies, give back this energy and move on. And I've worked with so many people who have this. I even had a friend of mine who didn't believe in any of this and he just could not get over his ex-girlfriend. He kept attracting he was attracted to the same type of women that looked like her, women that smelt like her, had her perfume, he could not move on because there was so much entanglement. And I was like, look, he came to me and he said, "Can I just have a session?" And he was not a believer in energy or anything like that. And I was like, yeah. From then, immediately his type has changed and he's settled down now after years of being a bachelor. Because there's so much entanglement with the people that we've been with. And even friends, it doesn't have to be someone that you're deeply like been intimate with. There's real entanglements with friendship. Like, for example, there was a client that I had that she was like a people pleaser, and she was so like almost looking after this friend the friend was like again in damsel in distress energy, always had problems, always had things going on. She was the one that was always there, always made the plans. She was playing like a mother role. And it just got too much that that she ended up getting drained every time she saw this friend, but she felt overly responsible for this friend. And I was like, when we went into session and we did it, it was like the energies were super tangled, and it was just this codependent energy. And it wasn't someone she'd been intimate with, it wasn't someone that was her family, it was just completely codependent. So we had to remove all of that. Now, the third origin is ancestral incompletions. Now, when in our ancestral line, our ancestors have not completed certain things in their lifetime, it gets deferred. Sometimes it skips a generation, but to it gets deferred to us, okay, to try and heal. So when someone has addictions or finance issues or even like weight loss issues, it can come from ancestral completions. So for example, if somebody, I've got all my client stories here, but I'm going to kind of paraphrase them. Otherwise, we'll be here for a very long time. So someone who had a grandmother who always was with alcoholics and she was not able to move past wounding. Like she had three marriages and all of them were alcoholics, and she wasn't able to, resolve that in her lifetime, but it was a deep thing that needed to be resolved. And like going in two generations, my client was now attracting alcoholics all the time, and she didn't understand why. Again, super amazing lady, could have had anyone she wanted, but she was just attracted to alcoholics, right? Because it was an incompletion, and it was an incompletion of worthiness and emotional suppression and trauma stored in the bloodline. And it was only when we went back to that time with her grandmother, sent the energy back, received the messages, and healed that wound, she was able to understand how much it affected her grandmother to choose those men, and how she wishes in her lifetime she had been able to walk away and choose better. And that is what she wished for her lineage. That's what she wished out into the ether, and it'd come back to my client. Another thing is money stuff. When somebody has been so in survival mode, here I'll read it. My great grandmother escaped poverty with six children. She never kept money in a bank. She hid it in the walls. She taught my grandmother to never trust too much or you'll lose it all. That fear passed down like gospel. I grew up associating money with danger, secrecy, and instability. No matter how much I earned, it was never safe to hold it. So this beautiful client would always manifest money, but always spend it, never be able to keep it, and was in debt. And this is why, because her grandmother just couldn't kind of hold the money. It was like she grew up exactly what I said, associating money with danger. And it was only since we again healed that wounding, she was able to see and relate to money differently. Another one, weight loss. So my mother used to say you should be grateful. When I was your age, we didn't have enough food. Her body held the memory of ration lines, post-war scarcity, and held guilt every time I left food uneaten. I wasn't just trying to lose weight, I was trying to release the emotional weight of generations who didn't have enough. So this client had a weight loss issue. She wanted to lose weight and she was doing everything, but she just had that thing of like she had to finish her plate, otherwise she just felt so much guilt because growing up that was so like instilled in her, and it wasn't just the habit that caused her to put on weight, it was just the kind of emotional holding on and relationship with food. Like, imagine you kind of accidentally serve yourself too much, or sometimes we don't know because we eat something different, like different portions every day, but you feel the need to finish it. And that was just, it was adding to her weight loss issues, you know? And even when sometimes when people go through a famine, we even know on a physical level, forget emotions and spiritual level, on a physical level, certain cultures cannot, their body just can't, even in the Indian culture, right? Because in the Indian culture, we've gone through so much famine, and colonization and moments where there was not enough food. So now our bodies store fat and it like doesn't lose fat enough, like quick enough. Because it's kind of, especially when you go on a weight loss journey, your body's like, hey, no, are we going back into famine mode? That's how much memory your body can hold from your ancestry and from just the stuff that your ancestors have lived. And it's all to do with survival. The fourth origin of wounding is past lives. Now, one of my clients, let's call her Amy, so she was with a really great man and they were childhood sweethearts, and she kept finding herself wanting to have an affair because she knew deep down on a soul level that she wanted to be with him, but she just couldn't understand why she kept having an affair, right? Because also she was like, should I be with him? And there was just so much stuff. But one of the things was we went into a past life and she saw that in a past life that he was her soulmate, right? In Africa. And all she kept seeing was elephants and all of that kind of stuff. And ever since then, she tried so many different things. She tried therapy, she tried this, and she used to hate herself for doing it. But ever since she'd experienced that past life where they'd been soulmates, that was enough for her to just go home, appreciate him, realize that he was her soulmate in this life. And now they've filled their house with elephant stuff to remind herself of a happy memory. And that was enough for her to just sort herself out and just be with him. And I don't often go into past lives. Actually, that's not true. We go into past lives about 50% of the time with clients. But I found out that sometimes when you have a past life thing and it comes back of your soul trying to tell you something, it's so, so powerful because we can carry wounding from our past lives. I had a past life. This is a story about me, where obviously, if you know my story about how I was a singer and I lost my voice and all of those kind of things, I had a past life where I was in a kind of patriarchal society and I was singing with the women to kind of bring up the community, and the men didn't like it. And they told me to stop. They said, stop, don't sing, just do your job. And we kept singing because that was our kind of way to reclaim power. And I had lost my life from that. So I always felt in this life when I sing, there's also something pulling me back. And that was it's many things, but it was also that past life that when I healed us, when I actually started singing again. So past lives are really crazy when we do this in HFH and how we experience them. The fifth and final one is collective consciousness and programming. So I spoke about the collective cloud where we upload forms and ideas and download them, and it turns into culture. So things like hustle culture, like, do, and certain things in this generation with the relationship culture of the stuff that they're learning, that's also lodged in our systems, and it governs how we act. Culture is such a big thing, so we have to purify what we upload. When we purify ourselves, like the things that we constantly are thinking and believe we're actually uploading, and what we download, so the things we consume and hear about and buy into, we're downloading. So we really need to be careful of that and clear it up. So let's go on to what doesn't work in healing. I'm going to talk a little bit about my high frequency healing method as well. Now, what doesn't work is forcing yourself to change. So saying, I'm going to, not do this anymore and I'm gonna create new habits doesn't work because, as we've discussed, these things run so deep and they're lodged so deep in our systems, physically, emotionally, spiritually. So just forcing yourself to change and getting angry at yourself that you're not changing is just not enough. So say if we take an example of a weight loss situation, just forcing yourself to eat better and do those things, it works sometimes, but often it doesn't. Or in relationship patterns, saying, I'm not going to be into that kind of person anymore, or learning a lot of educational content and saying no, it's just going to create that distance between you and you even more. Because now you'll be feeling like, why am I acting like this? You'll be going crazy. It's like, why like you'll start getting angry at yourself because it's lodged so deep. The other thing that doesn't work is just creating mental shifts. Like if we do everything on a mental level, like talking a lot and just telling ourselves we're not going to do something, or reprogramming our mental mind, our mental capacity, our mental field is like 10% of the whole thing. So maybe you'll make a few adjustments in the conscious world, but probably it will go back. Another thing that doesn't work is focusing heavily on the already manifested 3D and not the emotional and spiritual body. So what we're experiencing now in the 3D is old news. We have manifested this moment about 3 months ago, depending on how fast or how, depending on our vibration. So rearranging everything in the 3D right now is not going to do anything. Reacting to the 3D right now is not going to do anything. We need to go up emotional layer. It's like everything comes from the unseen, metaphysical layer, emotional layer, then physical layer. So we need to be working on all the layers, but especially those layers. So doing more without changing frequency. So sometimes people just go on a rampage of consuming information and like reading the books, and they're adding more into their system without clearing out, where you need to clear out the old imprints. You need to get into energetic alignment. You have to make peace with certain things. You can't build from a distorted foundation. You have to build from a clean foundation. And we are like, you know, those like buoys on in the ocean, those like floaty things. We're like that. There's actually nothing we need to do. All this stuff, imagine like a container of water, and you're the buoy, Buoy, and there's all of this stuff on you, like ancestral stuff, past life stuff, collective stuff, life experience stuff. And like over time, all these things are just pushing you down and it's heavy on top of you. Now you are saying, I'm going to change my habits. I'm going to believe in myself. I'm going to do more. I'm going to do it. And you can't rise up because all this stuff is on you. So once you clear all this stuff out, you just rise up without anything. You actually don't even need to make a habit change. Space, you just create space and you rise up. And that's why there's nothing that you really need to do. After you do the work of clearing out and calling in the new frequency, that's it. It's all you do. Just get on with your life because you'll start feeling different. It's evidential based because when you start feeling neutral towards triggers and situations like that, it's actually neutral. And you don't feel that same emotion that you did before. You don't feel the intensity of that trigger. That is your evidence that it is healed. The other thing is isolating yourself. You know, feeling, I hear a lot of people saying, I need to do this on my own. I need to figure this out on my own. Now, I am a big fan of sovereignty. Like, the work that I do with people comes from a collaboration. I'm not passively doing healing on them, and they're not doing it on their own. We're doing it together because my value is that everybody is a healer and everybody has a connection to the divine. And I want you to find your connection to the divine and be sovereign. But that doesn't mean you need to do everything on your own and everything by yourself and hold shame about not being further along, feel shame about being part of a community or divine support or receiving. Because healing and quantum leaps don't happen in echo chambers, they happen in resonance, right? Another thing is spiritual bypass. There's so many interruptions while I'm doing this transmission. I'm just trying to get through it. I want to tell you guys. So another thing is spiritual bypass, right? So when we use rituals and mantra and mindset work in the correct way, it's super powerful. But when we use it to just escape the discomfort, avoid the body, the trauma, the messy human emotions, then it's again, it's like an example of putting a lot of stuff on top of us when we're trying to rise. So embodiment is the portal. So how do you shift? You clear the body on all layers of the body to cause a soul reset, mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, using something that is very resonant with you, or you can use the high frequency healing method, which is something that I have developed. Whew, a little bit out of breath here. Which is just going through and using the body as a vessel, using it as a portal and a messenger, understanding that it holds the unspoken memory of every physical contraction, every emotional imprint, spiritual block, and karmic lesson. And when we reconnect with the body's messages, we open up a channel to the deepest levels of reset, reconnection, recalibration, and identity shifting into a version of you that's actually authentic. A lot of people think that the version that they are right now is authentic, but if you're not having the true relationships you want and the true life purpose you want and the true expression that you want to express, then that's not authentic. You're actually living something that's inauthentic right now from all these things that I've mentioned. So I will tell you, you know, there are 5 steps to HFH, you know, base if we have to put it right down to the foundation. And then there's also some disclaimers because it is a somatic experiencing method, but it also is a method to connect to your intuition, your higher self, and to your spiritual team. So, first of all, you listen deeply. So, say you're out and about and you get a trigger. Let's say you are with a friend, and now at home, take whatever trigger you want. I'm just going to make one up. Say you're with a friend and she snaps at you. Now, to a lot of people, that wouldn't be a trigger. Snapping meaning she's short with you. To a lot of people, that's not a trigger. But that used to be a big trigger for me, and I know that for highly sensitive types, that's a trigger. So, in that moment, listen deeply to the body's sensations, the emotional currents, and the energetic holding pattern. So, instead of getting annoyed and just thinking I'm annoyed and going into the mental space, go deeper in the body. Where are you annoyed? Where in the body can you feel it? And what we want to do is we want to allow release. So in an ideal world, I would say, I'll come back in a second. And this is before we even have any kind of conversation, because when you have a conversation with her from a triggered space, she's not going to be able to hear it and she's going to get defensive. So we need to clear the energy before we have any kind of conversation. Now, of course, I work people with people deeper on their dominant patterns, but this is something you can do in the moment. So go away and just allow that to release. But the most important thing is don't just release that into the environment, release it into something higher. So I always use a golden portal or the golden light. Release it into light. Because remember what I said about thought forms. You don't want to release things out into thought forms so that when the next person comes up, they feel irritated. And I also learned this from doing plant medicine as well, that how much as a society we release out into nature and how nature feels bogged down by it because we're all life forms. So we need to release in a very sacred way. And releasing can look like many different things. It allows the energy to come up. You can connect with the texture of the energy and you allow it to come up and to truly release. And it's always important to clear that density with higher intelligence and divine light. And this is where you bring in your spiritual team or your practices or whatever it is that you connect with. And then we recode that with precision. We recode it in Vedic Tantra. We recode the cleared space with high vibrational mantras, energetic symbols, solar aligned frequencies. So ensuring that you're not just leaving an empty space, you're recalibrating up to a new frequency. And another thing I want to say is sometimes when you do this work, a different part can come up, right? We can meet foreign objects, we can see things, and we always think that it's a part of us. But a lot of times it's a part of somebody else that's lodged in our system because we carry the same frequency. So we have to send that energy back to the person. So anything that comes up, ask yourself, is it mine or does it belong to someone else? And send the energy back to them. Now, this is just a very simplified form. This is something I teach. I teach the full extensive of the high frequency healing method. I will be developing it into a certification course because it has had so much success with the clients that I have worked with. And if something has resonated with you today and you are really on this journey, of clearing out with integrity deeply and in sovereignty. So it's not me doing a passive healing and you're not all doing it on your own. We're doing it together and we're working with higher intelligence. And for you to truly learn the HFH method so you can take it forward in times of everyday occurrences and also take it forward in big moments of transition so you can always maintain your field, then I would suggest that you book a call today, right now, and get in touch with me and we can have an intuitive reading. I can read your field. We have a talk and we talk about if this journey is correct for you. Of course, this journey is custom for every single person I work with because every single person is different. But I want to give you the opportunity to do that today. So the link is down below and you can get in touch. And next, I have got for you as part of the virtual concert something called the Butterfly Effect song. And this is for gentle ascension and clearing. So if you wanted to try the mini version of what I've said today with HFH, you can. And you can just put this music on to really allow you to gently ascend, release, and heal. Thank you for being with me here today. I really hope this has helped. If you want more extensive knowledge on the throat chakra and mother and father wounds, I do suggest that you purchase the Golden Circle because the masterclasses are in there and you also get a one-to-one with me as well. So thank you so much for being here with us today and for this festival. Sending you so much love. This segment has been one of those, the transmission kept trying to interrupt. I had to go answer the door, come back, but we got there. We got there, and it's such important information. So much love, and see you on the other side.